Yeah.
You want to like him, but you can't.
Are you listening?
What?
Are you listening?
Did you bring me on this show to insult me?
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
Hey, y'all don't want it with us, man. We straight gangsters over here.
Straight
man.
gangsters.
Ah.
Yeah, you are listening to the Scout Team with Scout Team Sports. Today is Thursday, September 20th, and we are always excited to be with you Monday through Friday, 6 a.m., replays at 11 on 12ouncesportsradio.com. I am one of your gracious hosts. They call me Loudbeard.
You are the most egotistical, self-deluded person I have ever met.
And that is all true. And I have a special guest in studio with me this morning, and it is the big man, the El Presidente, the janitor, the Beck's Work Weekend Review, the little bit of everything. Are you on there with me, Jeff?
Oh, yeah.
I'm on.
Can you hear me?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, absolutely, sir. Welcome. I'm glad to have you on this morning. Hope it's not too early in the AM for you.
Oh, I'm on top of the world, guys.
That's fantastic, man. I really appreciate you jumping on. Our other co-host, Chris America, you know, he felt that it was necessary to go up, and he's flying or driving or doing something up to Michigan. He's such a big Jim Harbaugh fan. He wanted to go see Jim Harbaugh in person and really cheer him on so Michigan can have a big win this weekend. What do you think about that, being an Ohio State fan?
Who's going there? I was listening to the radio station in one ear and listening to you in the other just to make sure I sounded good. Who's going to Michigan?
Chris America. That's what he's leaving Florida. It's beautiful and sunny and hot here, and he wants to just go up to Michigan because, I mean, he bleeds, what is that, blue and maize? Is that what they call it nowadays?
Maize is another word for corn, isn't it? That explains a lot because last night he had one of his Michigan cronies giving me a hard time on Twitter about the old Urban Meyer subject. So, of course, he's going to go up there for a little powwow and high-five each other.
Absolutely disgusting.
Pick
you
a
ask
team.
me.
Pick a team. Is he a Michigan fan or a Florida fan? You can't be both, can you?
Well, I think he's dating, or girlfriend / Miss America is a big Michigan fan. So when you have it in the family, you got to support your significant other. So he kind of supports them to help support her being a fan, but I think deep down inside he really struggles with this. It's like he's torn. He doesn't want to let everybody know, hey, I'm a Michigan fan, but deep down inside, he's got a little Michigan in him.
Well, I'll just get my wife to root for Bama, my daughter to root for Clemson. We'll just go through the top. I have 5 kids. We can go through like the top 10, and I can't lose this year.
Oh, yeah. You know, that would be the worst, especially the Bama thing. I can't deal with the Bama thing. So we've got a great show ahead of us today. Tons of subjects to cover. Jeff, you are near the Cleveland area. You're in Ohio at least, and you're a Browns fan. You're an Ohio State fan. So tonight we've got Thursday Night Football, Cleveland going up against the New York Jets. So we'll dive into that. We may talk a little Urban Meyer. I feel like it's a little played out, but hey, why not? Every other talking head talks about Urban Meyer nonstop. Mark Cuban pays out $10 million to a women's organization. We'll maybe talk a little bit about that. I wish he was paying $10 million to 12-ounce sports radio, get us off the ground. That would be a little helpful.
Do we just have to tell him he offended us, and then maybe he'll send us some money?
Hey, if that's all it takes, because I'm offended by him right now. Just him being him.
Exactly.
He doesn't even have to do anything. Just stand there and look goofy. I'm offended. Jimmy Butler wants out of Minnesota, but says he does not want to go play with LeBron. And John Jones is eligible to come back and fight. So, man, a lot of great topics going on in the world of sports. But, Jeff, I'm going to throw you on the spotlight a little bit. If our listeners don't already know, you are the station program manager, the station owner. 12-ounce Sports Radio is Jeff Beck. So if you wouldn't mind, just tell us a little bit of how this started. as the Scout team, we support everything 12 Ounce Sports Radio is doing. We love the idea of being an online radio station and just growing this sports community that we are. So tell us, how did it start for you, and what does 12 Ounce Sports Radio mean for you?
Well, first, you're forgetting I'm the janitor as well, so I got to put that on my resume.
Yeah,
There's a backstory to that. So my dad's been self-employed since I was 2, and when I was a young teenager, he showed me how to do taxes for his tax return, and he would always put janitor on his tax return for his career. So that's why I always say that. I joke around.
Nice.
Yeah, this is kind of grown out of me for a long time. I don't want to go too far back and take too much of the show's time telling you how 12 ounce kind of was born in my head. But when I was younger, I had a neighbor who had a ham radio. I thought that was the coolest thing ever. He knew the technology. He knew how to work the sound waves to from his back porch go live on the air as some obscure channel. And I mean, nobody listened to him, but it was still the coolest thing ever. And of course, I've always been a sports fan. I don't know if I've ever mentioned it on the air, but I am adopted, and my first shirt was the world's greatest quarterback. It had Snoopy on it. So I was naturally drawn to Miami of Florida because when I started watching football, I kept hearing announcers say, it's quarterback university, and I always remembered that shirt. So through the years, I've played college football. I've been to the Army. I've coached high school and junior high football. And I'd say about 2 years ago, I was really missing the coaching life. I missed coaching football. I wanted to be involved in sports in some way. I didn't want to be a ref. My football coach in high school used to say refs are guys that couldn't coach or couldn't play, so they became refs. I wanted to be involved in sports somehow, and that's where I started looking around, and I thought, okay, my friends used to say, why do you hate ESPN so much? They've kind of come around and seen the light. And just looking around, I see, a lot of these sports outlets are corporate driven. And I said, well, maybe that's how I can be involved in sports. I can create something where I kind of give a voice to fans, aspiring broadcasters, maybe people that have kind of fallen out of the business and still want some airtime, or want to write, or want to be on TV, or want to announce games. So that's kind of where we're at. I did some research and said, okay, I can create this for minimal cost. Now I just have to find talent. That was the hardest part, trying to figure out who the heck am I going to find. Luckily, I stumbled across you guys. I know Basement Sports Report was one of the first ones, but they're no longer. Reality Check-In, but I got lucky. The concept or getting it started wasn't that hard, but it was tough to, how am I going to find talent, I guess, is what I was telling myself back in October. And we've gotten pretty lucky. We have a pretty lineup. We came into contact with Sports Radio America, which is an affiliate of ours, or we're an affiliate of theirs, however you want to word it. So yeah, it's been fun. It's gone by in a blink of an eye, and I think we've gotten some pretty big strides and some cool things coming up too. Actually, since you asked me how this has started and where we're at, I was just talking to our hockey play-by-play guy, and he mentioned that I think we're going to do live hockey on the TV channel this year. So we're a pretty young station, and here we are. We're already about to do live sports on TV. So I'm pretty excited about that.
Yeah, that is awesome. I mean, the station itself is just doing phenomenal. And, I've met so many people through this opportunity. You get to meet a lot of great guys. And unfortunately, you mentioned Basement Sports Report. There's been a lot of great shows that we've come in contact with that have put out a great product, and they just got burned out from whether it's their daily lives, they've got things going on, or it just didn't work out with whatever partnership they had with their co-hosts. And you see these shows like Basement Sports Report, and those guys put on such a great product. They were a podcast for, I think they're close to 2 years, if not more. And, they ended up folding and never quite broke that mold, and we're hoping that we can be that step up and help these young up-and-coming sports broadcasters and analysts and whatever get to that next level. And the Sports Counter was another great show. And then just recently, we had our good friends over at Rehab Sports Guys. They had to take a little bit of a step back. So it's not an easy gig, because most of us we've got day jobs. We're trying to keep our day job up floating. We're trying to keep our families floating, and we're coming on this radio and trying to make sure that we give the fans what they want to hear. And I want to thank you again for everything you're doing at 12 Ounce Sports Radio. This has been a great partnership, and it's going to be a great partnership moving forward. And we love what you're doing. And you mentioned about Sports Radio America. That's another connection that we've met. Memphis Spence over at Sports Radio America. He does his own show, College Credit Hour, which we're now able to air on 12 Ounce Sports Radio at noon every day. And I mean, the guy's a great guy and just a great connection. And we're just growing our network, and we're just getting bigger and bigger. And look out, America, here we come.
Absolutely. And you say Memphis Spence and Sports Radio America. That's just another case of we've had a couple lucky breaks for us through this process, and we were very lucky to get in contact with them. I have to give Chris credit on that. And if anybody's listening that listens to College Credit Hour, if you notice that commercials cut in, it's because we're doing a radio feed from his show and his station. So sometimes we lose his feed and a commercial kick in. I just want to explain that. Oh, by the way, Chris is texting that your volume's a little low. So here we go. So that goes into my next point. Starting 12 Hour Sports Radio has really made me appreciate the grind. If you think about all the writers there are, all the show hosts, all the podcasts, and like you mentioned, most of these people, a majority of these people, it's not their sole gig. I mean, it's not all they do for a living. They have families, they have day jobs. And boy, you talking about, making your day job still functional and family life. And I know when I first started this, I was up to midnight, 1 a.m. every night, programming the station. Now, luckily, with the relaunch, we have a lot of live stuff, especially through Sports Radio America, and it's not as much work. So I've been able to get a little bit more sleep than normal. But you do appreciate, if there's one really good thing between starting this and looking at people from the corporate networks, I call them, I do appreciate the grind. It's not easy. They do a lot of travel, whereas we work all day and then we got to prepare for a show in the morning. I really appreciate what you guys are doing, because I'm usually, a zombie walking around the house getting ready for my shower right now, not live on the air for an hour.
Oh, yeah, no, I know what you mean. So, Chris America, please text me and let me know if my volume is any better. I think I got the adjustments up the way I need to get them up. And I'm glad he's listening in. So we've got at least one listener this morning, and he's a great patriot. And just for him, I want to go ahead and just give it just one last time. America. Yeah, that's for you, Chris America. And hope you can hear me better. And he said, okay.
For the record, I did not kneel when you played that.
Okay, good. Okay. We don't want to have all of our Colin Kaepernick fans out there to come in and send us hate mail. We want this to be a politically neutral site for everybody. No kneeling, no not kneeling. We're just going to go neutral all the way.
There you go.
All right, Jeff. So Thursday Night Football's tonight. I love Thursday Night Football. I actually kind of miss the old color rush. I feel like these teams should go out and wear goofy colors. The Browns would be in some neon orange color tonight if they were doing the color rush. But I think tonight is the night. Tonight is the big night where you finally see Cleveland get in that W column. How are you feeling about this game up against Sam Darnold and the New York Jets?
Well, I'll tell you, if you looked at this matchup, I don't know, when they set the schedule on paper, it's like, okay, so I'm not watching football Thursday night for the casual fan. But after 2 weeks of NFL action, I think people are more interested. The Jets looked good against the Lions. Sam Darnold, of course, first play, pick 6, but then he bounced back with like 200 yards and a couple touchdowns. He's looking good. The Browns, I know the woulda, coulda, shoulda, but technically, if we had a good kicker, and I know a lot of teams could say this right now, we should be 2-0. I hate to even talk in those terms because we're not, and got to move forward. But we should be 2-0. So suddenly this game is important, which nobody. I didn't think it would be important even in week 3. I always joke the Browns are eliminated by week 6, but it's important because we need a win. I mean, we're tied with the Steelers, so we're not in last place technically. I don't think, and. It's exciting because Sam Darnold, the rookie, versus Cleveland, one of the better defenses in the NFL, I believe. I got the Browns winning this by a field goal, ironically.
Well, with having a kicker that you can't trust, it's kind of hard to say by a field goal. But
no,
you
we're
brought in a new kicker, didn't you?
Yeah, we're good. We did the tryouts at the last tailgate party, and they just picked the drunk out of the crowd, so that's the new kicker. But we're good. It'll be better than Zane Gonzalez.
Yeah, I don't even have the kicker's name written down or anything. I looked it up the other day. It was somebody I had never heard of. I don't even think he's actually played in the NFL. I think he played some preseason, some college. They definitely got this guy off the streets. I thought they were going to go after Dan Bailey. That was the pick I was hoping for. The Vikings end up going for Dan Bailey, which ends up being a better pick for the Vikings. I think the Vikings have more of that upside than the Browns do, so Bailey probably got to pick which team he wanted to go to. But, man, this kicker can't be any worse than Zane Gonzalez, I'm hoping. And hopefully it gets to the point where the Browns get such a lead that they don't even have to worry about the kicker. That would definitely help out in ways that the Browns need that to help out. On the other side of the ball, I'm excited to see what Sam Darnold can do. Now, the Browns' defense has played so good the first 2 weeks, and that is primarily the reason why the Browns have been in the games, is I think the defense. I think Tyrod Taylor's passing percentage is too low. He does bring a lot with his legs. He gets first downs running, but I think the offense is still sputtering a little bit. But the defense seems like it's running on all cylinders. It's an exciting defense to watch. So I think Sam Darnold might be in some trouble. This might be one of those USC games where he throws three picks. I can see that Browns defense giving him a hard time, harassing him all night, and creating some turnovers. You think that Browns defense is going to stand tall against this New York Jets offense?
Yeah, Sam Darnold has not faced anybody like Myles Garrett. I mean, I've been watching him for a while now, and our defensive line is unbelievable, and they're going to put a lot of pressure on him. I don't think he's going to be able to adjust while he is a rookie. And then more into the woulda, coulda, shoulda, you talk about the Browns offense. If only we had another go-to receiver, maybe the offense would be a little better. Now, Callaway showed some speed in catching that touchdown last week, but he's not really getting open. I mean, that was Tyrod Taylor throwing it as far as he could because the time was running out, and Callaway just full dead sprint caught up to the ball. I think he even outran Landry going past him and catching the football. But we needed somebody, say, like a Josh Gordon or a Dez Bryant. It's unfortunate. Tyrod looked a lot better last game, though. He was 22 of 30 for 246 yards. He did throw a pick, but Njoku had a couple drops. There's a couple other drops, too. He probably could have been 26 of 30 passing. It wasn't a bad game for him. He definitely didn't cost the game. Here's my worry about tonight is if the Browns, if it's a close game, which I think it's going to be, or even if the Browns lose, then the fair weather fans are going to want Baker Mayfield because they want to flash your name because they're going to be watching another rookie play tonight. And I don't think Tyrod Taylor's the problem right now. I think we have one good receiver that's being double teamed, and I don't, quite frankly, think our line's a very good run blocking line. Again, if only Joe Thomas or somebody was on our line, that would be great. It's typical Browns. We have some of the pieces we were missing before, but now we're missing those pieces now. It reminds me of the Indians, late 90s, early 2000s, where we either had really good pitching or really good hitting. We just didn't have both at the same time. But we'll see. I think we're going to get our first win tonight.
Well, you bring up the Mayfield decision and picking him number one overall and then not starting him for the season. That's like a big decision for the Browns. And, they must believe in Taylor, so they've got to give Taylor the opportunity to do what he needs to do and let him just own this offense. But you're right, the fans are going to be begging for Baker Mayfield if they don't see a win tonight. So that's going to come out. And also, you say about on the wide receiver end, Dez Bryant still has not been signed. Do you think the Browns are going to maybe look at this game and if their offense sputters and they see that their wide receiver core needs that extra piece, do you think they're going to go out and maybe talk to Dez Bryant again? I know there was some preseason talk, but it never ended up materializing. He's still there. He's still ready, and I think he would come and play for the Browns.
Knowing the deal that the Browns made with the the Patriots, I don't see them making any good moves. Now, a lot of people say, "What do you mean? Josh Gordon has let us down how many times?" But you see that trade. Josh Gordon's trade to New England. We get a 5th-round pick, a conditional one. But if he doesn't play 10 games this year, there's only 14 left. We have to turn around and give them a pick back. That's a terrible deal. So I don't see us making any really smart or great deals in the free agency market. I mean, I think we lowballed Des Bryant the first time around. He's probably, knowing Des Bryant, lost interest. I don't know what they're doing. They were looking or talking to a free agent, and I wish I would have wrote it down before the show. But they are talking to a free agent that was a well-known name. He's just getting older, I think. I don't know what they're going to do. They have the parts there. They have good running backs. Duke Johnson can catch it out of the backfield. And Njoku, I think, is, he's got the skill set to be Gronk-like, not Gronk, but Gronk-like. Bless him, bless him out there. Obviously is, I think, one of the elite receivers. We have the parts there. I think it's partly our line is the issue here. Tyrod's under duress a lot. And just doesn't seem to be a lot of big holes in the running game. So, but I don't know. I can't get inside their head. They probably are looking for another receiver, but I haven't heard a lot of news.
Yeah, I'm sure you'll hear it first being up in Ohio, but I would like to see them at least make an effort at trying to pick up somebody, because I think that offense is just one small piece away from really getting this thing together and stringing together some wins. So we've got a lot of other great NFL games coming up this weekend. So last Friday we aired a segment called Who's Your Daddy? And Jeff, I'm going to do this segment with you. I'm gonna name off a couple key pieces from a game coming up this Sunday in the NFL, and you tell me who's your daddy, which player is going to have the best game, or which defense is going to have the best game, and then tell me why. So I'm going to start it out. This, I think, is going to be a big one. We've got Aaron Rodgers going up against the Washington Redskins, but who's going to have the better game? Is it going to be Aaron Rodgers or his knee, which has been having some problems? So real quick, Jeff,
Who's your daddy?
Aaron Rodgers or his bad knee?
Well, a knee injury, any injury in the NFL is hit or miss. I mean, if he gets hit the wrong way, then he's in trouble. But I would be in trouble in this household if I didn't say Aaron Rodgers is my daddy. I think Aaron Rodgers goes off against Washington. I am a Packers fan. My excuse for having 2 NFL teams is the Browns disappeared for a while. Yeah, we're Aaron Rodgers fans here and Packers fans, and I see him lighting up this Redskins defense.
All right, so I'm going to read the headline from this news article from The Score. It says, Rodgers' concerned knee issue will get worse. Does that change your thought?
Well, your knees get bad over time, even if you don't have an injury. So, yeah, he's speaking the obvious, but
okay.
He can't. If I have any weight or pull in the Packers locker room, I would say, please don't make my secondary NFL team start Deshaun Kaiser. I had to watch him all year last year.
Ooh, yeah, Kaiser was bad when Rodgers went out in that first half of the first game. Kaiser was awful. All right, so 2 very exciting young quarterbacks are going to be going up against each other, both of them coming off of pretty significant injuries. You've got Carson Wentz finally starting back with the Philadelphia Eagles, and then you got Andrew Luck, who has looked good coming off of that shoulder injury. So, Jeff, my question for you is,
Who's your daddy?
Carson Wentz or Andrew Luck?
I'm going with Carson Wentz. Carson Wentz has been chomping at the bit. He watched Nick Foles win a Super Bowl, and it's weird that, his second or third year, he was looking like he was headed towards the MVP, and then he gets hurt. And then all of a sudden, he's watching a guy. They had a hiccup last week, but he watched his backup win the Super Bowl. I think he's been waiting for this moment. Nothing against Andrew Luck. He has looked good in his comeback. And he's got some parts around him that are helping him too. But I just see Carson Wentz going off in this one.
Yeah, no, I have to 100% agree with you. I'm excited to see what Wentz can do. And I think the Eagles' offense has looked a little I don't know, questionable with Foles this year. Foles came in and filled in that Super Bowl run perfectly, exactly what you would want somebody to do. But this year, I watched that Bucs game. I was actually live at the game watching, and I wasn't super impressed with Foles. I felt like the offense was definitely missing something. And so I think Wentz can come back in and bring a little bit of spark to that offense. So, yes, Carson Wentz, this is his day. All right, so Cincinnati is going up against Carolina. I feel like these are two teams that have very strong defensive fronts. So if you are going to look at this game and you've got the Bengals defense going up against the Panthers defense, I ask you the one question, Jeff.
Who's your daddy?
When I say this game could come down to a field goal, I mean it could be 3-0. I've not had a lot of faith. Now, there's a little bit of a backstory here. My grandpa, when I was little, used to always listen to the Bengals on the radio when the Browns were on TV. Well, he hated Art Modell so much that he became a Bengals fan. So I should pick them, but I'm not going to. I'm going with the Carolina Panthers here.
Yeah, the Panthers week 1, they're very stout against the Dallas Cowboys, so I was excited to see that. So I'd like to see that week 1 Panthers defense come out. But I got to go Bengals here. Bengals have been impressive. Now that the offense is looking good, I think that puts a lot of pressure off of the defense. Now, Andy Dalton will go on being just the average quarterback that he is, but the offense altogether with their weapons looks good enough to keep the defense off the field just enough to get rested, so when they are on the field, they're going to look stout. I got to go Bengals with this one. All right, so West Coast matchup, you have two extraordinary young running backs, Todd Gurley with the Los Angeles Rams and Melvin Gordon with the Los Angeles Chargers. We've got a LA battle. Out of these two running backs, Jeff, I ask you the one question.
Who's your daddy?
That doesn't get old. So
no, it doesn't.
Is the challenge who's going to have better stats?
Well, this is your call, whether you think it's going to be the best player from the game or if you think they're going to make the biggest difference to help their team win. Whoever is going to be your daddy.
Yeah, I mean, if the Rams didn't have Gordon, or not Gordon, but Gurley, I'm sorry. If the Rams didn't have Gurley, I mean, they're a mediocre team, I would think. On the flip side, the Chargers without, I mean, we know Phillip Rivers, right? He makes that team go. Now, of course, without Gordon, they would be mediocre as well. So I'm being wishy-washy and on the fence here. I'm going to go with Gurley just because the Rams have the hot hand and the Chargers always are confusing. I don't know. They're always good on paper and then don't do much. So I'm going to go with Gurley.
All right. Good choice. Good choice. Next one, we've got a coach battle coming up. The Detroit Lions and former Belichick disciple Matt Patricia going up against his old coach, Bill Belichick. So, battle of coaches here. Matt Patricia versus Bill Belichick.
Who's your daddy?
Well, I think historically, Darth Vader has always dominated his past assistants who have gone on to become head coaches. And I'm going to quote George Carlin here. Grown men should not be wearing their hat backwards. So I'm going to go with Belichick.
Yeah, I don't think we could go without Belichick on this one. He's the man. I hate to say that, but one of the greatest coaches of all times. That was a little bit of a softball. I just thought it was cool because he's going up against his former assistant. And I got one more NFL one for you. Then we're going to hit up the commercial break. And on the backside, I'm going to do a couple college football Who's Your Daddies. And we'll talk about this upcoming week in college football. But there's a little bit of magic in Tampa Bay right now. So you have Ryan Fitzmagic lighting up the scoreboard each and every week. And he is going up against... This is a top 10 power ranked team by the Sports Turd, and that is the Pittsburgh Steelers. And I know you're a big Steelers fan, Jeff, especially being there in the Cleveland area. You know that Ben Roethlisberger is going to show up for this one. So Ryan Fitzmagic versus Ben Roethlisberger.
Who's your daddy?
Daddy. First of all, how are they in the top 10? They've tied the Browns, and then they gave up 42 to the Chiefs and lost. I don't get that, and I don't even know why the Sports Turd, a.k.a. Mothership, is even doing a top 10. It's pro football. I mean, let's grow up. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers have the hot hand. Fitzpatrick looks like McGregor. It's awesome. And the defense of the Steelers is embarrassing. If I was a Steelers fan, they just punished Antonio Brown. As you were talking, I'm watching the TV. Antonio Brown's been punished, but of course it's the Steelers and Tomlin, so they probably just literally smacked him on the wrist, and that's it. But there's some turmoil in that locker room. I'm going Fitzmagic.
Yeah, I can't disagree with you on that one. As soon as he donned the Conor McGregor deal, I knew that he was my man always and forever. All right, Jeff, on the flip side, we will be discussing some really great college football matchups. Everybody stay tuned for a quick commercial break.
Did you know 40 points on your credit score could cost you $40,000 on a mortgage? Thankfully, Lexington Law is here to help. Since 1991, Lexington Law has helped over 500,000 customers take action on their credit reports. Call 877-910-7472 to talk to a repair specialist now. Personalized credit consultation is free. Getting access to your report is free. Plus free score evaluation with a recommended solution. Call now and get on the path to recovery. Call Lexington Law at 877-910-7472. That's 877-910-7472.
Oh, it's summertime. And what's that mean? We're all heading off to the golf course. But don't go too fast. Make sure you go to 12ouncesportsradio.com and book a tee time. At the bottom of any page, you'll see Book Like a Pro. Click that banner, enter your course of choice or zip code, find a tee time you like, book that tee time, and you'll get up to 50% off, courtesy of 12-Ounce Sports Radio. Book like a pro, even if you don't play like one.
Ring Central features all-in-one phone, messaging, and video conferencing. It's easy to use with unparalleled security. Ring Central simplifies things so you can grow. Call Ring Central to speak with a representative about a price for your growing business at 877-779-3860. Again, that's 877-779-3860.
Yeah, welcome back. You are listening to Scout Team Sports, and we are excited to be here each and every morning on your weekday, 6 a.m., and replay again at 11 a.m. on 12ouncesportsradio.com. If you ever want to get social with the Scout Team, don't forget, check us out on Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook at Scout Team Radio. We have a special guest in studio today, and that is the Jefe, the program manager and janitor with 12-Ounce Sports Radio. And I just wanted to give a quick shout-out to the lineup we have ahead of us today on 12-Ounce Sports Radio. We've got a lot of great shows coming up, and I want to make sure everybody tunes in, listens throughout the day, because you're going to get all kinds of great information in the sporting landscape. And once again, Scout Team comes on 6 a.m. and the replays at 11 a.m. We've got Sports Radio America affiliates coming on with Clutch Talk Sports on at 8 a.m. and at noon we've got College Credit Hour. Today, this afternoon, we have got Kentucky Sports Guys, All Sports Best, Weekend Warrior later in the evening, Cats Talk Wednesday, and tonight at 10 p.m., the Primetime Angles radio show. Hey, Jeff, this guy over at the Primetime Angles, man, he puts on a pretty cool show. You've been had an opportunity to listen into his I guess, his angles with sports betting, and he's able to give some tips, and, I mean, just kind of a different, unique show, and we're glad we've added him to the lineup, right?
Absolutely. Can you hear me all right?
I can hear you just fine.
Okay, it's because of my headset. All right. Yeah, absolutely. So he's he's been a nice addition. He brings high energy. His show's really good. He's out in L.A. and then I think on the weekends when he does his show on the weekends, he's in Vegas. So that's why it's at 10 o'clock at night, different time zone. But we've been on the phone a lot together. He is very meticulous with his sound. He doesn't want to go. He actually postponed going live for 2 weeks because he didn't feel right about the sound. So I do appreciate that. He brings high energy. The funny thing is his dad played football right down the street at McKinley, which is one of the larger schools in Ohio and storied history. He's never lived in Ohio, though. But one thing about him, I don't know, if you play FanDuel, they do stuff like that. They do like daily fantasy. Most of it's picking games against the line, so you have to be in a state where you can do that. But I got to give this guy credit. I couldn't believe I've been listening every night just because, again, he calls me a lot and makes sure his sound sounds good. So I want to make sure he's feeling comfortable. So I've been listening to every show, and he's right a lot. I mean, I remember the night of the Ohio State TCU game. He was doing a show from Vegas that night, and he called me. It was about halftime, and Ohio State wasn't looking good, and he just threw it out. He's like, "Oh, don't worry, Ohio State's going to win by 12." Ohio State won by 12. It's like, how's this guy know? So I'm kind of seeing how the sausage is made here because I always wondered, these Vegas lines, how are they always so close? And this guy lives, eats, sleeps, breathes sports and sports betting. That's all he does for a living. So good at picking games. But yeah, check out the show. It's Thursday through Monday. Tuesday and Wednesdays he's off, but 10 p.m. at night, Eastern Standard Time. This guy knows what he's talking about, and he's not going to bore you. Let's just put it that way. He's pretty high energy the entire hour.
Wow, that's awesome, man. I love when we bring in great new talent to the radio station and checking out this new show. I mean, maybe I should get into a little bit more of the professional gambling. Now, I haven't done so well on my local bets. I've had to shave my beard. I've had to wear a romper. There's countless bets that I've lost. So maybe if I put money in on it, I'll do better, and I can get advice from him. This will be all right.
We'll get your advice from him, but I think sometimes we make bets like when we're betting our beard. We might just for the sake of fun not use any data when we take a side on that bet. So I wouldn't hold that against yourself. But, I wouldn't. 12-ounce sports is not saying everyone should rush out and start spending their paycheck on gambling. It's definitely a craft. And it's a slippery slope. It could get away from you. So just
ladies and gentlemen, you heard it here first. Jeff Beck wants everybody to go spend their entire paycheck, their entire nest egg on sports gambling. Thanks, Jeff Beck. We appreciate that.
I did not say that.
You're crazy.
All right, so we talked all NFL first half. I got to go into some college football. We got a good weekend ahead of us. There's some pretty good matchups out there. And one that I'm kind of intrigued is we've got Scott Frost with Nebraska. A little bit of a disappointing start, 0-2. And he's going up, taking Nebraska over against Michigan. So you've got two storied programs. Both have seen some downtimes in the recent history, but both have big-time names with high expectations. I have to ask you, Jeff, Scott Frost versus Jim Harbaugh.
Who's your daddy?
Harbaugh and being my daddy and an overnighters come to mind. No, thank you. But here, I feel so bad for Scott Frost. Here's a guy who's probably, good for him. He went to his alma mater. It's what's considered an upper echelon Power 5 school. But he's looking over at his old school like, they might go undefeated again this year. And I don't want to even get into the fact that you're a Central Florida fan. They're probably going to get screwed again this year. But I see them running the table. But I feel so bad for Scott Frost. I don't feel bad enough for picking him here. They just don't have enough pieces. I got to go to the khaki.
Yeah, it's hard because Michigan just has a bit better talent. Nebraska really, in my opinion, doesn't even stand a chance. But if they pulled out an upset, I think we would all be happy. So I wish Scott Frost the best, but Jim Harbaugh's going to own this weekend. Here's another one where I think I already know the answer, but I just want to hear it out of your mouth. We've got the great Jimbo Fisher, who brings a national championship to Florida State, pulls that program out from the gutter. He goes over to Texas A&M, almost pulls out a big upset against Clemson. but now he's going up against the real juggernaut known as the Roll Tide. We've got Jimbo Fisher versus Nick Saban.
Who's your daddy?
Well, I'm going to give Jimbo Fisher a little credit. He did take Clemson down to the wire. Now, Clemson's one of those teams that are we that sure that they're that good? I guess we'll find out. Well, we're not going to find out. The ACC's week. But here's Jimbo's problem in this challenge here is he's not only going up against Saban, he's going up against the Alabama defense and offense, and he's in deep doo-doo. I think Bama just blows them out here. I think this is going to open some eyes at the fact that Clemson only won 28-26 over Texas A&M. I see Bama winning this by 4 touchdowns.
Their offense has looked unstoppable. They have not been tested in a single ounce this entire season, and I think it's just going to continue. I'd love to see A&M with an upset. That would mean so much to me, but I can't see it happening. Jimbo's done a great job with that program so far, and we obviously see where Florida State is without him, and yeah, I gotta go with the Jimbo on that one. I mean, I'm sorry, I gotta go with Nick Saban on that one. Alabama is gonna own this game, and it's just hard to go against them. Last week, I made this really terrible, bold prediction that Ole Miss could hang with Alabama, and that I don't even want to talk about that. But yeah, so moving on. Oregon Ducks are going up against Stanford, and this isn't Samford. This is actually the real Stanford. So we've got 2 West Coast teams, both ranked. Oregon versus Stanford. Stanford being a little bit of the favorite in this one. So who's your daddy? You got a duck versus a tree.
Who's your daddy?
Now, I'm going to admit, I listen to Cows and Quacks, but I haven't watched Oregon play yet this year. I don't even know if they've been on TV in my local area. I've watched Stanford. Now, is Bryce Love back? Was he disciplined? Was he hurt? What was the issue last week? Do we know? Do you know?
I really don't know. I would say the totality of his season has been an extreme disappointment. He missed a little bit of time. He came out week 1 and looked absolutely disastrous without hardly any rushing yards. This kid's got to pull it together, whatever it is, whether it's discipline or injury. He just has to get it together. He has the potential, but potential, as you know, following Josh Gordon the last 4 years, doesn't mean anything if you can't put it out on the field.
Yeah, and this is a tough one for me to pick because I think without Bryce Love, Stanford is pedestrian at best. But in Oregon, they look like they're back. Then they had a Portland State wasn't exactly, or whoever they played last, wasn't exactly a blowout. And again, I apologize. I haven't seen a lot of Oregon football this year. I just haven't seen them on the tube. But, I mean, my gut says my gut says Oregon. My head said Stanford, but I guess I just have to take a chance. I'll go with the Ducks this week. Why not?
Yeah, go for the upset. College football is all about rooting for the upset. So good call there. All right, I just have a couple more here. You play to win the game. We got Herm Edwards and Arizona State going up against Washington. So I guess Herm Edwards versus Washington.
Who's your daddy?
Oh, I'd love to say Washington's going to bring Herm back to reality, but I think somebody else did that last week. I think Washington wins this rather easily.
Yeah, see, I think Washington's a little overrated. They came in with very high hopes, and they look bad. They played Auburn week 1, and I mean, I know that's a tough matchup week 1. Auburn's a good team, but I think Washington's overrated. I think some of these West Coast teams get a little bit, I don't know, the USC, Oregon, Washington, Stanford, I think a lot of them get overrated from time to time because they're beating up each other, and I think it's a little bit of a weaker conference. So, I mean, I'd love to see Herm pull it out. I got to go Herm, man. Got to go with Herm.
All right, I respect that.
They're all good. All right, so, Jeff, can you hear me all right, man? I think I lost you on the input, but that is okay. Because we're going to carry on, my friend, my wayward son. All right, so I was saying about Herm Edwards. This is a guy that was on ESPN for, forever. I think it was like 12 years or 10 years, something like that. Able to resurrect. Oh, Jeff, I think you're back with me. How's it going, sir?
What'd you do? Kick me off the air?
I don't know what happened, man. You know what? I'm going to have to put in a complaint to the station manager for all of this. I don't know what happened, but it was definitely not my fault.
I didn't
All
know
right.
you were such a big Herm Edwards fan. I was picking Washington, and next thing I know, I'm off the air.
Yeah, boom. That's what Herm has the power, man. He makes these things happen. All right, one last one for you. I'm gonna say these are two basketball schools, though Michigan State fans will probably want to execute me for being so bold. But Michigan State, they're still ranked number 24. I have no idea how or why. They've looked awful this year. Indiana basketball school 3-0. Can they come in and get the upset against Michigan State?
Who's your daddy?
Now, many people initially looking at this would say, "Oh, by far Michigan State," because if anything, both of them are probably basketball schools, but Michigan State has been close to a football school in recent memory. Here's the thing that makes this game interesting, at least to me. Notre Dame beat Ball State by 8, and then last week Indiana rolled Ball State 38-10. And that triggered something in my mind like, maybe Indiana's better than Michigan State. I don't know how Michigan State's ranked. They barely beat Utah State at home. I had fake Lou Holtz on my show on Friday before that game, and he said if that game was in Utah State, Michigan State would lose. He predicted Michigan State would barely win that game. Then they go to the Desmos to an unranked Arizona State. This is a tough one. I'm going to just go with pedigree and name, and there's no stats behind this or anything. I'm going to go with Michigan State. I don't know why.
I'm going for the upset. I think Indiana can pull it off. I think they're going to be one of those surprise sleeper teams that comes out from left field, ends up having like a really good one-loss or undefeated record going into the last couple weeks of the season, and they start getting that hype. So I'd love to see Indiana pull it out. Michigan State, again, I've been so disappointed with what they've done this year. I just don't think that they are really that good. They've been lucky. They've pulled out a couple games that they should not even. It shouldn't have been close. They should have been blowing out these teams, and they still pulled it out. So that's it on our college football talk for the preview stuff for the week. Thank you for participating in my Who's Your Daddy segment, Jeff. I really appreciate that. But there's a lot of other news going on in the world of sports. I do want to dive into this Mark Cuban story. So a few months back, maybe more than that, maybe more like a year ago, there was a lot of news coming out about how the Dallas Mavericks organization was having a lot of issues with how women were being treated, a lot of sexism, a lot of just discrimination, and finally, Mark Cuban has to pay the piper. So Mark Cuban is now forced to pay $10 million to a women's organization to help support, bring in some of these issues to light. And, you know, recently we had Serena Williams go off on a tennis judge about how if it was a man, this wouldn't have happened. I mean, in the sports landscape, I would say sexism is still a huge deal. What are you thinking about this whole mess?
Well, first, I don't know that Mark Cuban had to pay them. I think when you say had, I don't think you mean he was contractually obligated to pay anyone. I think mentally and morally he felt obligated to pay something to someone because it was running rampant. Yeah, and Serena Williams acted out of line, but I've never been in those shoes, so maybe that felt right to her. But yeah, unfortunately, it still exists. Prejudice, racism, all that stuff still exists, and you know, you try to avoid being political on a sports show, but it's sometimes very hard. It just seems like, yeah, it's still there, and I don't know why. We talk about it all the time. We talk about changing. I guess just the powers to be or the people in charge aren't changing it or turning a blind eye. But it's unfortunate that someone like Mark Cuban, because he's outspoken against those types of things. You know, he's a left-leaning political guy that typically they're the ones that are kind of all-inclusive and frown upon this type of activity. And you know, this is kind of like the Urban Meyer situation a little bit. This is a guy that's super busy. He's got the Shark Tank. He's got how many companies? He's got how much money? He's all over the world. And he kind of lost control of his front office there. So, you know, he felt obligated to pay a women's group, but Somebody's got to. I don't know how you fix the problem because it doesn't seem to be going away. We're talking about it all the time, and somebody he put in charge has kind of let things slip away to where women are being harassed and unprofessional jokes, and I don't know the whole story. I mean, was there actual physical contact, or was a lot of just the atmosphere there?
I think it's just the atmosphere. I don't believe there was any physical contact. I mean, we weren't going full Urban Meyer style with this. This was just a little bit more subtle, but still not a good thing.
Full Urban Meyer. Okay. I set you up for that one. But,
yeah, you did. I had to throw that in there. Speaking of disciplinary action, Mike Tomlin is not so happy with Antonio Brown. He misses a meeting on Monday. There was that story where one of the former front office employees for the Pittsburgh Steelers said that Antonio Brown should thank Ben Roethlisberger because Roethlisberger has made him who he is. And, Brown comes out and is like, trade me then. Why don't you trade me? I'll show you who I am and what I can do. So this guy's just become full diva. So I don't know what to think of this, but is this diva going to get in the way and really affect the Steelers? Because I feel like the Steelers are imploding. Le'Veon Bell's not showing up. Antonio Brown's full diva. This team's falling apart. You think Steelers got a problem moving forward?
They absolutely do. They have an aging quarterback. They have a terrible defense. Now, I'm not going to go after Antonio Brown. This has been the shtick from elite wide receivers for the last 20 years. They're kind of glamorous. They're kind of high maintenance or divas. This is the attitude of wide receivers and cornerbacks. This isn't surprising. If I'm the owner, I'm looking at Mike Tomlin. He's the guy that's got to be the disciplinarian, but he's always been the knock on Tomlin is he's a rah-rah guy. He's not an X's and O's guy. He's not a disciplinarian. He's kind of the cool guy coach that tries to befriend the players and high-five them and chest bump them. And this is what happens. As a former coach myself, and I've played into the college ranks, there's several different types of coaches, but the rah-rah coach tends to kind of gel with the players as if he's one of the guys, and eventually you lose respect from them. He's already been yelled at, Antonio Brown. He Facebook Live the coach's post-game talk, and he got disciplined. It didn't help. He's on Instagram and all that stuff, putting out stuff that probably the team doesn't want him to. This is another case like Mark Cuban where you put somebody in charge that's letting things get out of control, so the owner's probably going to have to step in and tell Antonio Brown, dude, you got to cut this out. Because the coach isn't going to do it. He's going to say, I disciplined him. But the coach is clearly one of the guys. So there's only so far he can go in disciplining Antonio Brown. It's going to have to come from somebody higher up than the coach. And they have a real problem on their hands. They have a receiver that now is not happy. He said, trade me if you want to find out which one of us is better. The quarterback's old. The running back refuses to play. He just flat out says, I don't want to beat up my body this year because I'm a free agent at the end of the year, even though he has to show up before week 10. They have a bad defense. They're in trouble. The Steelers are in trouble. And who saw this coming? Did you?
Nah, I wasn't high on the Steelers going in because of the Le'Veon Bell thing, but this has gotten worse than I thought. And I think it's just going to go downhill. I think they're going to have a real rough year all the way through. Not looking good for the Steelers. Real quickly, I just want to hit on a couple of these other top subjects, and then we're going to finish up the show. But Jimmy Butler wants out of Minnesota, trying to force his way out. He says the Clippers are on the top of his list. He wants to be out in L.A., but he says he does not want to play with LeBron, so he does not want to go to the Lakers. What do you take on this? I mean, a superstar in his prime could go play with LeBron James, who I feel is still the best player on the planet currently, and he chooses to say that he'd rather go to the Clippers. I don't know what to take of this.
Here's two things about this. The first thing is it's almost fall/winter in Minnesota, and even residents of Minnesota don't want to be in Minnesota. So, and basketball isn't during the winter. So he wants to go out west, but he doesn't want to play with LeBron. Ryan from our podcast, we haven't done the 12 on Sports podcast in a while. Their lives kind of like rehab. They had some things going on. Rehab sports, not actual rehab. They had things going on that we haven't done the podcast, but he brought it up last basketball season or when Kyrie wanted out. So a little bit further past that. Maybe LeBron is the problem. You see a lot of players don't want to play with him. And some people say, well, it's, some guys don't want to play with a superstar. I think if you're like me, I watch every Cavs game. It's on the local channel here. People joke, "Oh, LeBron's the GM and the coach," and that derives from the fact that if you watch a Cavs game, especially the mundane games like Game 13 of the NBA season, where barely anybody's watching because they're playing somebody bad. No offense, but Charlotte or something like that. He's yelling at players. He's coaching. He's talking over the coach. Some guys don't want to be a part of that. LeBron's a great player. You could argue one or two, top five for sure. But I just think he turns some people off because he's that guy. We've all played with one in high school or college that just thinks that, he's in charge of everything and, he's the most important thing there. And you could argue, yeah, LeBron is the most important thing there, but it turns pros off. It turns men off. I mean, they're all getting paid. I don't blame them. It's the NBA. You get to pick where you play anyway. If you don't want to play with him, good for him. He's at least being honest, right?
Yeah, honesty is the best policy. That's the way I look at it. I'm with you, man. Jimmy Butler, let him do what he wants to do. And I would not want to be in Minnesota either. I live in Florida. I could not deal with that cold weather, especially through the winter. Now, I do want to say one last quick update. John Bones Jones is now eligible to come back into the UFC starting in October. He says, the path to reclaiming my throne is officially open. Is this good or bad for UFC? Because John Jones he's been tested for steroids on numerous occasions. He's kind of a bad guy, but he's back and he's an amazing fighter. Is this good for UFC?
Absolutely. Any news of a guy coming back that's been on the marquee for UFC events. I think their viewership's down. At last I saw, they're losing some viewers. So yeah, this is going to be nothing but good for them. I noticed that Chris America was salivating last night that John Bones Jones coming back. I didn't know he was such a big fan.
He's huge. That's like his favorite fighter of all times. He thinks he's the greatest. He just goes on and on. It's unbelievable.
Well, see, they gained. Well, he probably watches every event anyway, but yeah, it's good for UFC. They need to figure something out. I don't know. The American sports viewer, the average fan, I think you and Chris have talked about it many times before, is if nothing's really happening, just the competitions from week to week, you're going to slowly lose viewers. So any kind of headline grabbing thing is good, and he's good for UFC because he brings legitimacy. He is a hell of a fighter, and also why it's good for them is because he's probably going to start tearing through the weight class, and immediately, if he doesn't go straight to a title fight, he's going to be beating some guys pretty bad, and that'll be news headlines as well.
Now, I 100% agree. I'm excited to see him back in the octagon. Great news for UFC. They need that headline. They need big stars and big names to run that. All right, Jeff, we're out of time. This has been a great show. I want to thank you for being on Scout Team Sports this morning. You filled in absolutely wonderful for Chris America. I actually would rather have you on than him. Don't tell him I said that. All right, man. Have a great day.
Make sure to catch my show every Friday, 2 to 4 p.m., and listen to Scout Team anytime they're on the air. They're great. Thanks, guys.
Beck's Work Week in Review, one of the best shows on 12 Ounce Sports Radio every Friday. Peace.